Welcome everybody, we're back with our night podcast and it's about the bone dancer, the sorceress, mentalist and necromancer. I will hand over to my colleague Dom. Welcome everybody, and we're back with our night podcast. See, now it's done the same as always, I've forgot to mute my stream. I'll hand it over and enjoy the podcast.
Hi, thanks Shileah. Thank you very much for streaming. I apologize for that problems with mine. Stream, and thanks for everybody for sticking around. If you're just starting, you haven't missed anything. We're planning on discussing 4 different classes here, and we're tackling the necromancer first, and we have a few very experienced players here. And the first thing, and sorry to ask the necromancers repeat themselves, but everybody appreciates it now they'll be able to hear them. What do you think the strengths and I think the weaknesses of the class, the necromancers you see them in 2016, and how do we fix that, and I think everybody recognizes necromancer is not in the place that everybody wants it to be, but I think off stream I think there's some thoughtful suggestions about it, maybe how it can be made better. So I'll let you guys, if you guys could recapitulate what you just said and take it from there.
All right, so I'll start back off with strengths and weaknesses that I see, and the top 3 strengths I see for the class as a whole is the level 4 and level 7 pets are non-mezz and non-rootable, meaning they can ignore speed warps, leaving the pet in a safe spot so you can go get intel on the enemy in a tower or in a keep, move storms, drop traps, that sort of thing, and corner nuking, when you can nuke people around the corner. It's just one of those advantages we get that makes it enticing maybe to a group to invite us. Weaknesses are pathing. The level 45 pet, since it's blue cone, it never resists hardly anything thrown at it. And it's extremely painful for the healers to either heal directly the pet or buff the pet when we're out in RVR and we lose the pet.
And there any additional things that Phobies, if you might like to throw on top of that list?
Aside from the pathing issue, I think he's got it pretty well covered.
So I thought there were 3 good suggestions I heard you make off stream about, that might be, I mean, it's easy for me to say what might be easier enough for the dev team, but don't sound like total reworkings of the code from the ground up. You mind just going through those?
Well, yeah, just as a bit of history, originally when the Necromancer class was added to the game, they had no tether at all. They could leave the pet in a portal keep, and they could go clear to the other enemy's portal keep and even explore inside. Of course, they couldn't do anything, couldn't cast any spells. All they could do was look around. And originally they could use rams like that, the pet off the side. So rams got nerfed, the tether got nerfed. So if they could actually just increase the tether by about 50%, increase the timer on the pet from when it would go from at the end of tether to vanishing, and then have the stop follow on the pet be 50 units from the shade. So when the shade stops, the pet is within 50 units. Often right now, since the last couple of patches, if you stop, half the time you can't get through a gate because your pet's not close enough. So you either have to reposition, tell the pet here, and half the time you lose the pet because somebody kills it because you couldn't get in the gate in time. Or you port from a port stone and you can't, or you port but the pet doesn't because it was too far away. So if the stop follow was adjusted, that would be awesome.
What about their RR5 or their mastery level, or the mastery levels that they have access to? Ones that would be a better fit, other RR5s that maybe with some tweaking from other classes that might be a model for improvement.
Well, considering how often we lose the pet, our realm rank 5 is pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy with that one. And I think both the master level paths that we have available to us are pretty appropriate.
I guess.
Well, I agree on half of that.
Please go ahead.
I agree. The master levels, what we can use of them, are great utilities to our class, especially things like moving storms with the shade. I disagree with the Realm 5. I view it as something that's kind of worthless because half the time when you lose the pet, somebody's already got you targeted to kill you because you're going to be at 5 or 10% health when you lose the pet. So, I mean, just because you can resummon a pet in 3 seconds, if your dex is on your tune, you're going to cast it about 5 seconds. So it really doesn't benefit us as much as a better Realm Rank 5 could. Now, I don't have an idea what that better one would be, but I think as it is, it's just a moderate Realm Rank 5 ability.
What if, I mean, I've seen this suggested out there. I mean, the Realm Rank 5, given the problems of the class, I mean, maybe the Realm Rank 5 should be baseline and something else substituted. All right, all right. So that's relatively non-controversial. Okay.
Sorry, I was having trouble with my browser going back every time I release my vent button.
Uh, no, that's fine. Is there what about um, I don't want to say giving up the argument, but conceding at least part of the argument, you know, that the some of the um, intrinsic problem is because with the Necromancer class is because it's such a unique class. The mechanics are different from every other class in the game, and I asked this initially, and so I don't want to make you guys repeat things, but if if someone said we're going to take away those mechanics, we're going to make the class, we're going to make the caster will become the pet, essentially destroying the class as we know it. But I've seen it as a suggestion for a fix in things. What do you guys think the reaction to the Necromancer player base would be to something like that?
I think that it really depends on how that was implemented, and if you're, I mean, if we're talking about making us really similar to something like a Kabbalist or a Spirit Master, then that's kind of redundant, and I think most people aren't gonna like.
I completely do not want the class to be changed in any way, shape, or form as far as changing the pet, the way the pet works, because that is who we are. I mean, it's kind of like saying, um, I'm going to change your DNA. You're no longer going to be a human being. You're going to be a cat. It's like, well, I don't want to be a cat. I want to be a human being. So I don't want to be anything other than what the Necro is. That's the way it has been. It's what I've been playing for many years. Um, let's just put it this way. I quit playing in RVR when they took away dots from the pain line. Partially because it was never mentioned, never said anything about it. It just stopped doing what it was doing. I went and played in Harris for 2 years.
Um, do you think the Necromancer would be more workable if it was more, instead of a caster, a pet is more of a melee pet, where you're ordering a pet to do styles instead of that fix things?
That's
better or worse?
That's actually a suggestion that I've heard before, and I really do like the idea of having that as an option for a spec line. Like he said, the pain working line is pretty subpar. The damage output is just not there, and the utility is not as good as the other line. So if it were possible to remake pain working into something that leaned the pet more towards being a melee pet, I think it would have a lot of potential.
Actually, I would like an answer from the devs or from whoever why they did that to the pain line. Why did they remove the dots interrupted on every tick? It wasn't just from pain line, it was also from CL dots. Originally, when I talked to some of the devs back in 2006 in Las Vegas at the round table, we were discussing it, and it was by design. It wasn't something that was a bug or something that needed to be fixed. It was the way the class was designed.
Yeah, I should make clear I'm not a dev. I'm not a broadsword or mythic employee. So I'd answer that question if I knew. Just been a team lead before that, but your guess, I think you're better informed on that than I am.
I just wanted to end this podcast, so if one of them hears it, maybe they could give us an answer. I've asked in the internal forums, but nobody's ever actually given me an answer. People assume that they were just fixing something that was broken. It's like, no, I was told specifically it was designed that way. So, anyways, let's not gripe on it anymore.
No, so our time's limited here, and I think we're probably going to come back to the Necromancer at the end of things because there's a lot to discuss there. But we got other people in Ment, and before we move on to the next thing, I guess I'm just curious about the perspective of other caster classes that we have in there that certainly have had interactions with sorcerers, maybe played sorcerers on your own too. About your thoughts about the Necromancer from the outside a little bit on where they are and how they can be made better. I don't know, maybe Bumbles, but any thoughts there?
Basically, since the Necro's been in game, I've just honestly ignored them. I've never played one, never had an interest to play one, just because I've seen so many issues with people griping about them continuously, from tethering to pet paving to, everything that goes along with it that they're talking about now. So, from my point of view, I just never had any interest in playing one, and I could imagine, if a new player comes into the game and they see a lot of the information that goes across region, they're going to probably stay away from it too. It's one of those classes that I think you really need to, there's a huge learning curve with. This game has a giant learning curve for any new player in the first place. And I think Necro is just one of those classes that, you really have to spend time with it to figure it out.
That's a pretty powerful statement there about where the class is. I don't know if Mac has anything else to add in that, or Kytie.
Not really.
Okay. Well, I think we'll come back to the Necro here at the end of things, but let's move on to the sorcerers here a little bit. Max, since you had the mic last, so kind of start off at the beginning. The strengths and the weaknesses of the class. Where do you see where the sorcerer is now in the game?
Okay, I personally think that, in just my opinion, that sorcerer class is probably in a really good place right now. It's probably the best of the Alpcaster classes in main CC. They have 3 really decent ways of specking. You can spec almost full body, almost full mind, or as I run a good split spec, which is a mind body spec split. The weakness that I see is their third line matter really doesn't do a whole lot of anything.
And Bumbles, do you agree or disagree with that, or break it down a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the sorcerer as a whole is just a super well-rounded class. They have incredible survivability. Their utility play is really high up there. But like Mac was saying, there's really only 2 lines that you can go. You can go body or you can go mind, and that's it. I think the game has changed in such a way that Mezz across the board for bards and healers, including sorcerers, the whole mechanic of Mezz has just really changed. While people hate CC, everything's come in to make CC almost like a second thought, which has kind of changed the way that sorcerers spec. Most sorcerers now, I'd say, they probably go body spec for more DPS. They're going to be able to debuff for other Alpcasters, stuff like that.
So I know we're the opposite point where the Necromancer is, but let's. We got a good class, and maybe we can make it even better without overpowering it. Are there things that can be done to matter that would, without overpowering the other lines, that might make all 3 attractive?
I think in today's RVR, dots as a whole are kind of a useless tool. They don't do the DPS fast enough to kill anybody. Unless you're solo and you're kiting, stuff like that, they don't do anything. You could be in a Zerg, you could dot every person you see, and healers don't run out of power these days. They can just continuously heal over and over again for the most part. Something ticking, for 86 damage as a delve, in game probably hit for 120, if that. is not going to do much. It doesn't interrupt either, other than the first cast. So something in the dot line needs to be done. I've been on the boards and posting about it, and there's been a bunch of stuff brought up on what we could do with dots and stuff. Some people have talked about matter debuffs on dots. Some people have talked about adding a snare to dots. Somebody brought up an idea of actually having a kind of like an extra utility to go along with dots, and I thought it was an interesting idea where when you dot somebody, it actually will debuff their either A, DPS, or B, their ABS, which could actually put sorcerers and matter sorcs in a good spot for tank groups.
Mac, what are your thoughts about the matter line or the RR5 or their access to the mastery levels, or are those latter two things not an issue because they're already great?
Their RR5's okay. It works for me at any rate. I tend to lean a different way and maybe get rid of matter completely and take and roll it into the other two lines, split it up, and just give whatever's there in matter to the other two lines. And as far as the master levels, they're in a pretty good place, pretty much standard for the caster. Most Sorcs tend to run Convultor rather than a Stormlord, just because they can grab a pet.
Is there any concern about the sorcerer community? I mean, that their roles being stepped on some by other, with the interruptions being a big part of the game. Their competition, the ALB group is, there's always competition for spots, unlike there always is in other realms too, but it's pretty tight in Albion. That other classes are edging into what they can do best for a group, or they feel pretty comfortable with their unique role.
No, you still need a Sorkin group. I mean, they have Bolt Rain Macmezz. That's basically, that's a continuous interrupt. If you're playing Zerg play, I would say, 80% of your sorcerers should just be spamming Mezz, because it's going to keep the back lines completely interrupted. It might not keep anybody mezzed, and that's more for 8-man, small man, stuff like that, but it's purely interrupts. But in 8-man, and you'll never get rid of a Sorc in a group.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. A Sorc's in a really good place as far as spots in a group. I've never had problems. As I said, I run a split spec. I do a lot of mezzing, but I'm also we're kind of a jack of all trades. You get a lot of utility, you get roots. Although the AoE root's a bit of a low level. Also get amnesia, but our bread and butter, as Bumbles said, is the bolt range Mezz for interrupt.
Well, I don't want to pester you guys but there's a list of things I'm supposed to try to hit. And so are there particular abilities, maybe lower down the list of abilities that Sorcerer has that you don't use, or not? I mean, ability it's not even worth putting on their toolbar that could use some attention to, even though it might not be a game-changing thing.
I'll go back to it again with the dots. So my sorcerer is rum rank 11. I've been a matter spec, 49 matter, the rest into mind for the past 3 months or so, just to try it out, because I really wanted to flesh it out and see what it was like. I love the DD snare. At first I was like, it's a 3.0 cast, it's only a 179 delve, but at rum rank 11, you can get some pretty good damage with that, especially being matter based. But dots, anybody who's mind spec or body spec, they're not going to have dots on their bar. They're not going to cast dots. It's pretty much completely useless.
I agree with you, and even if, like, I run the split spec, don't have a dot on my bar, they're of no use to me. I've got too many other tools.
Can I ask a question here?
Of course.
So, quite a while ago, they retooled all of damage over time spells to tick twice as fast as they had previously. You don't find that that's actually made it any better?
No, like I said, just with the way that people can heal nowadays, I don't feel like it does anything unless you're playing a small man or solo in kiting.
What does your AE dot actually hit for? Is it like 130, 140 per?
Yeah. We only have single target dots, and yeah, they hit for about 120, 130.
And the other thing is with all the otherworldly items and DF items that they've got, people can stack to reduce damage, and that also makes a difference as to whether or not you want to dot stuff. And with a lower level dot like that, it's just I don't have it on my bar either.
Okay, I'm trying to keep on time here, and I kind of open up the discussion a little bit for comments on other classes here. And it's a little bit of an alb-heavy caster group, although everyone's being good about being neutral, I think. The Necromancers or Kytie on the Mentalists have thoughts about Sorcerers from the outside?
Yeah, they're very solid. I mean, I think every alb group, yeah, you could probably argue Cleric's the first spot, but I think Sorcerer's the second. Amazing class. Frustrating to fight against. They got a lot of utility, but as a mentalist, I can't really complain about that.
Well, speaking as the only Midgard caster, I love complaining about Sorcerers all the time. But I play when I play Alb, and they're a lot of fun to play. Any closing thoughts about from the Sorcerer representatives here before we move on to Mentalists?
I had a thought. You asked about master level lines, and I think adding Warlord to the Sorcerer would be a great thing. They added the Realm Rank 5, which the Sorcerer's Realm Rank 5 is one of the best in the game, I would say. But as Alb's main source of CC, I think they added that just to keep them up a little bit longer, because you get trained down, whereas opposed to healers and bards, they can Zephyr people away, they can phase shift. Giving that to a sorcerer would be completely ridiculous and make them super overpowered. Adding Warlord, it gives you a little damage mitigation right there on top of the Realm Rank 5. I think it just could add a little more flavor to the class.
And I think I know what you're going to say, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if they had Warlord, what would you take away?
Oh, I'd get rid of Stormlord.
Yeah, absolutely, get rid of Stormlord. The other thing I'd like to see them do to them is boost their debuffs back up to where they were before patch 1.113. With all the damage mitigation in game, that's a bigger nerf than what most people would realize.
Okay, I'm going to move along to the Mentalist here, and kind of the questions are going to fall all on the shoulders of Kytie here, who's representing them. And so to start things off, the strengths and weaknesses of where you see the Mentalists now in 2016.
Yeah, we're much like the Sorcerers, to be honest, in a really good place. We went through hell over the years, but where the class is now is fantastic. Lots of utility, caster class that can heal super quickly with great decks, decent damage, multiple CC options. See the overpowered baseline stun. Yeah, we've got it all really. Some may argue we've got too much.
Are there things that you'd like to see that to help out maybe the weaker spec lines that would, without overpowering the stronger spec lines, that you'd like to see happen?
Yeah, I mean, I had a thread open discussing this. It's really difficult because our sort of main spec, which is 47 Mentalist and 26 mana, that's kind of the go-to because it's so strong. I do feel the light spec is a little bit lacking of anything. It's basically just damage and a pet, and the damage is the same as the spec damage from Mentalism. So I'm not really too sure what they could do about that. Bumping up the damage. I think on such a strong class is a bit of a tough call to ask for, but it would be nice. Mana line, it's got some good stuff in there, but they suffer the same problem that all of the dot casters have been complaining about. which is just not enough damage. With so much healing available, without people bothering about power these days, you just kind of tickle people and basically give them CC immunity whilst it's ticking. Could maybe up the delve on the spec, the dots. I don't know how that would play out. Might be nice to get something high up in the mana line to give them a little bit more group utility. They get the fantastic heal over time, but that's single target. I was having a bit of discussion about maybe adding a lower delve version, sort of high up in the mana line, that was a group version. That would have to be carefully monitored because it could be extremely overpowered, but that might be nice for people running mana and Zerg surfing, keep defense, etc.
What about their realm rank 5 and master level ability? I know Convoker's out there, but what about those two RR5s and master level access? What are your thoughts about those?
The realm rank 5 it's fantastic. It's saved me so many times. I don't think any mentalist would want that change. Takes a bit of getting used to. But yeah, it's one of the best in the game. You can get jumped by 5 tanks, cast it on them, and they can't attack you for 20 plus seconds, depending on your duration. That's just incredible. The master level lines, I think before we had the speed warp added as a baseline, everyone was crying about no Convoker. But I can understand why they didn't put that in originally, because obviously we've got the pulse charm, the pet, being able to Convoker ML9. That would have been pretty nuts, particularly for PvE, and certainly for PvP before they limited it in the RBR zones. So yeah, Stormlord, well, it's got the same problem that all of the master level classes that get Stormlord have, which is it's just not that strong anymore. I'd much rather see Stormlord improve rather than it taken away. But the fact that mentalists get Speed Warp as a baseline and Warlord is awesome. It's a fantastic combination.
Are there things that are part of the mentalist spell list that don't make it on a mentalist bar that they're never used?
I think I use most of my stuff. I have to admit, I do tend to forget to use the amnesia quite a lot, mainly because I'm concentrating on using the near sight with the energy debuff. I go to for a ranged interrupt. But no, I mean, certainly for my spec, pretty much everything I've got is on the bar and is used occasionally. I'll only really use the baseline dot when it comes to PvE stuff. But it's nice if you're attacking a keep lord or something, and pop a leadership, and then pop a dot. It tends to do as much damage per tick as your nuke. So it's pretty good to sort of stack that up and then nuke away.
Are there particular? I guess I haven't asked this on other classes, but how about itemization wise? Are there problems for the mentalist?
We do have a little bit of an issue, whereas it kind of certainly for my spec, we need to spec in healing bonus, because obviously we can cast spec line heals. That does limit the options a little bit. It's not that it's impossible to get in, it's more that you tend to have to leave out maybe one or two really nice use items that some other caster classes who usually just want duration as well as the caster stuff can put in. But yeah, we're in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I know they have to fit that support role, so I wondered about that. Uh, what are some of the thoughts of some of our Albion casters on their mentalist counterparts from the other realm, about from the other side of things? Uh,
They do seem very similar to sorcerers in nature. They seem like a pretty well balanced class.
Yeah, I always looked at Mentalist as the sorcerer's little brother for years, who grew up, and just started to beat the heck out of him. Because they're pretty incredibly powerful with the fact that they can heal themselves, they get a stun, they can nuke. I mean, they can do everything that a sorcerer can do, except for root, really, and an AOE mez. That's it. But they get more, and free speed warp.
I will say on
Yeah.
Gaheris, I loved having my Mentalist and my Necro together. It was overpowered.
I think they're like the Sorc right now. They're in a very, very good place, and very, very useful in groups, very much in need in groups.
it's been a little while since I've played Hib, but so this might is there competition for groups wise? Uh, Mentalists and Eldritches and Enchanters. How does that break down?
Well, I mean, I have to say I don't do a great deal of 8-man, and I'm usually either zerging or solo and small man. But they've certainly got a spot available. I think if you're running a damage train, they're maybe slightly further down the list. But if you're taking them as a utility caster in like a hybrid group, then they get it all. Those groups, you need someone with a near sight. They've got it. The fact that you can heal makes it really difficult for the enemies, and not just pumping out a CL heal that you're talking 600-700 heals at sub 1 second cast time. It's really difficult to lock down a hib group who's got a warden, a bard, a druid, and a mentalist who can all heal. And if they've got two of any of those classes, it's you're on an uphill struggle as an enemy.
Uh, 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 Phoebe's or Kiraniri, any thoughts about from your standpoint about the mentalist?
Well, what he said is right on, man. I've seen Hib groups where they had 4 different classes healing, and it's like, God, which one do I target first?
Yeah, it's certainly pretty powerful in 8-mans.
Kytie, any closing thoughts about the mentalist, or um, special pleading for something you'd like to see happen with them?
Well, there's been talk for a while, which unfortunately I haven't been able to test myself, and I haven't seen any specific tests for. But when we had our mentalist spec DD changed from including the heal to just being a standard DD, a lot of people feel it still gets resisted as much as it did when it was still a double utility spell. I'm not sure about that because I play my spec all the time. I've not compared it directly to the light newt. I haven't played that spec for quite some time. But it does seem like it gets resisted a little bit more than like my Eldridge, for example. Maybe that can be looked at and just double check that isn't the case. And if it is, obviously change that. But we're in such a strong place, I wouldn't really feel that it's a good idea to ask for anything major. It might be nice for all of the top classes to have their spec dots delve increased by 10% and just see how that plays out. But other than that, I wouldn't really change anything.
Okay, so I was appointed to say a few things about bone dancers, and I know I'm in a ventrilo full of alb and Hibernian casters, and there's probably no, when I played those realms, there's no other class that was more despised, I think, than a bone dancer player. Uh, so I'm a little, uh, so I, and some of these players, guys, I think they remember back in the days when the bone dancers had the 4-second life tap. Uh, so before I start saying my piece, what do the opposing casters, that have played a while and remember the old bone dancer days, and now with their new pets, they kind of interrupt a little bit better than the old ones do. Think that bone dancers got to become a stronger class or a weaker class to fight in RVR? I don't know, Phoebe's, you want to start off with that?
I remember playing a bone dancer when they were relatively new, and I remember the 4-second life tap. It was neat to have, probably horrible to be on the other side of. To be honest, I don't feel like I see them as often in RVR as some of the other mid classes like Warlocks and Rune Master. So I don't know if I can gauge how effective they are now.
I mean, I don't want to come off rude, but I loved them because they thought they could kill me on my Necro, and I'd always beat them.
Yeah, well-played Necromancer, I think that's a tough out for a bone dancer. Bumbles, any thoughts from the other side about going up against bone dancers in the past or now, more powerful or less nowadays?
Well, go back to a point. I think the reason you don't see them in 50 RVR is because most of them are in Mulvic killing full groups. So that's one thing. But yeah, in Old Frontiers, when Bold Dancers first came out, they were horrible. As a sorcerer, it was, you couldn't do anything with them. That instant life tap was just a killer. They basically were caster killers, and that's it. But now they're a little more mellow, but they're still a fantastic class overall. I see people running in 8-mans and very good 8-mans with Bone Dancers, and they play really well.
Yeah, I'm horribly biased, and been accused of having uh, every key macro to life tap, so I could just slam my forehead into the keyboard and life tap, because that's all you needed to win. Um, the I'd say it's the Bone Dancer class. I think it's like a lot of them. The suppression and darkness can be very strong. Bone Army is mostly a PvE line, um, and like the other classes that rely primarily on dots, damage is pretty subpar. Uh, what I'd like to see for them is when they made the change from a 4-second to an 8-second life tap. They also improved the pets and the targeting of the pets, so that the targeting became automatic, and in my opinion, less skill based, because it was just automatic, just heat-seeking missile type of thing. Whereas before you had to find the person that you wanted to go after. So I didn't care for that change, and I think that led to a lot of problems, a lot of heat that Bone Dancers got down the road. Um, the 4-second life tap thing also, they're kind of changed the play style of that class in PvE. People that would cast or tank couldn't really do that. I know it's an RVR game. People don't care about that too much. Um, so I'm going to just ask a question. Go to Kiraniri, hear about this. So when PV, or I'm sorry, did Phoebe's, did you play a BD in Classic or back in the day?
I did. A long time ago, yes.
Okay, so let me just here. I'm just going to throw something out here, because this is what the Midgard constituency would like to see, some sort of return to a slower casting life tap, or to that reuse timer going down from 8 seconds closer to where it once was. So, what's the what would you think the impact would that be, Albion sorcerer wise?
Well, I mean, if they get to keep the same amount of damage, especially now with the improvements of some of the gear that's out and the ablatives and the absorption and everything, I honestly think giving them a smaller cooldown on that life tap would be, it would certainly have an impact. You'd see a lot more Bone Dancers.
And Bumble. I mean, so I asked Bumbles if the change in population for how many Bone Dancers you see these days is that because the Midgard, there's other classes in Midgard that are more feared?
I just think there are other classes that fit better into group setups. That's all. I mean, between warlocks and SMs and stuff like that, they all have a place. Be it 8-man or Zerging, that Bone Dancers can't. You put a Bone Dancer solo small man, they still do fantastic. But I think there are just better classes out there that can fit into 8-man setups.
I have a question for you as a Bone Dancer.
Shoot.
Does your Realm Rank 5, when you use it, do you feel it makes you a target or helps you?
Our Realm Rank 5 is pretty great. It gives us almost complete immunity to near sight. And if you're playing against players who really know what they're doing, I suppose they can target you, but it's not too tough to pick out the Bone Dancer anyways to begin with. So I think if it's all upside, it lasts. I can't believe how long it lasts. I think it's very, very good.
I guess I just always thought, oh, green pet, that's him, get him.
I think there's a little. I mean, that's interesting to say on the other side. I always sort of thought that I was kind of easy to pick out anyway. So tomato. I mean, but really, the near sight protection is really what I like the most about it.
Well, if you're a troll Bone Dancer, I imagine anything that you can do to make yourself a little bit smaller and a little bit less noticeable is probably pretty good.
Yeah, I play another Bone Dancer primarily. This one, I had to switch when that nerf happened because casting speed became a lot more important. So I was just rolling that out for old time's sake. So other, I think I said enough about the Bone Dancer. I think the Bone Dancer community, I think Mythic knows where they want that. They would like a return to the good old days of the 4-second life tap. I'm not sure that's happening. And if something could be done to the Bone Army spec to make it less dot reliant on damage, that would help them out. And their RR5 is great, and they have access to Convoker. I don't think they have too much to complain about from their mastery level lines. We started about 7:15, so we got about 15 minutes here. I guess I would open it up to, and it sounds like we certainly have some satisfied players that play sorcerers and Mandalists. So I would open this up, or if the Necros would like to take this time too. Mac or Kytie, we haven't heard anything from you for a little bit, so I guess one of you two guys have something to say.
Yeah, but Bone Dancers are really frustrating to fight against for a lot of hipcasters. With the possible exception of the Mentalist, I've got to say, only because we get Warlord. So if I play a lot in Cathal Valley, and the pet scare is a dream come true. Going against Bone Dancers, plus of course they don't have their Realm Rank 5, so near sight is a killer. So yeah, scare the pet, near sight, stun, nuke. Bone dancers are pretty easy, but when I get onto any other class in HIB, they're an absolute nightmare. So yeah, I think as long as pet scare is kept, fairly low key for a lot of classes and not something that's routine, bone dancers are in a fantastic place right now. I'd maybe like to see the reuse on the lower level pets, charge being increased. Maybe have it scaling with the level of the commander. It's pretty overpowered. They effectively get charge 5, on the first pet. Be nice if that was reserved for the top commander only.
Mac, any thoughts about the bone dancers or the other classes we've discovered, or your own class, or discussed?
I think the bone dancers definitely need, and I don't know what it is. I've played them a couple of times, and they just definitely need something to make them a little more group friendly.
That would certainly be well received by the bone dancer folks. Their perception is that it's a DPS problem. It's why they're not included versus a utility problem. And I'm not sure Midgard should have 2 utility classes like the Warlock, and then if the bone dancer is made into one, I don't know if that would be good for RVR. So Kiraniri, we've heard, the sorceress and the mentalist are very happy with their classes here, and I feel a little bad that the necromancers are in such a poor place. Um, do you, and I guess I just open the floor up if other things that maybe have popped in your mind here in the last, while we're talking about things that you'd like to see happen, or other shortcomings that need to be gone over before we wrap things up.
Well, first of all, I want to state that I actually don't think that the Necros are in a poor place. I think they need a few adjustments to the class, but I don't think they need overhauled. I think that maybe Painline could do with some revamping. I actually personally think that they should put the interrupting dots back on Painline for Necromancers. I think it should be part of their class like it was originally designed to be. It would definitely make them more groupable and help them. The biggest thing I think that they could do to change a class that would help us drastically is also make the pet a level 50 pet. We're a level 50 tune, the pet should be level 50 because we are the pet. So, but I don't know where they are, if they've ever even thought about doing that, or if that's maybe on the drawing board. It would be nice.
That sounds like a reasonable selection to me, and I'm sorry about that. Was a poor choice of words. I didn't mean to. So I take that back. And Phoebe's, other thoughts about the Necro class? Now we had a little bit more time to discuss everybody else.
Well, I mean, there's a handful of small bugs that all need to be addressed. Another one, just to throw it out there for you, would be something like the fact that our racial resistances don't transfer to the pet, which effectively makes them useless. There's a handful of these little nitpicky things that I feel like they could fix. That I don't know. I don't think the Necromancer's in a terrible place either, but there are certainly some things that really need to be addressed. We do need some attention, some real attention. The pathing thing is one of the biggest issues.
I'd like to add a couple small things. I like to think when I'm playing my class and I'm out there corner nuking in a tower or corner nuking in a keep, that I'm just pissing off the enemy casters. So to me, that brings me a little bit of joy when I'm playing the class.
Oh, absolutely, inflicting misery on the other team. That's that's why we play this.
And I want to explain, if people aren't sure what corner nuking is, the Necromancer is the only class that actually has 3 line of sight checks when they're casting. So you have to see your pet, the pet has to see the target, and you have to see the target. The only thing that doesn't have 3 line of sight casts is your instant cast in each of the spec lines. So the screaming one for the instant life tap, the dejected cackle for serve it, or the single target dot. You can have a line of sight for your pet and a line of sight the target, and you can hit them.
I wonder how many other people knew that, because that was squirreled away somewhere in the back of my brain somewhere. But thank you for bringing that up and explaining it. Um, if is there a particular on the internet reliable resource that you guys have found to get up to speed? That maybe we ought to mention. For someone who's brave enough to take on, or I shouldn't say that. Someone who started necromancers and wants to kind of dive in on some of the nuts and bolts that you think would be useful to a new player.
I don't think there is, actually. Not a reliable, up-to-date, single source of information, no.
I've thought about trying to make something, but back when I was really thinking about it, there wasn't enough Necro players to worry about it. Now that we're getting a few more, it might be worth doing, like on the Camelot Wiki or something.
Yeah, I thought that I remember back in the day that some of that information was codified or not collected somewhere. Well, we have a few extra minutes here, so I guess I'd open up to the floor if there's something else that someone was hoping that they would get discussed that we haven't maybe outside, not necessarily limited to these 4 classes. So I just open up to the floor. Bumbles, we haven't given you an opportunity to talk here recently. Any thoughts you have here at the end of things?
If you want me to talk, I'm just going back to the matter line for Sorcs. Some of the things on it would I think would have to change. Right now, their spec DD, the highest delve, is at level 49, which basically only gives you 22 extra points to put into something else. So you're basically saying, all right, I'm going to be a dotting, snaring caster, and that's it. You get a green AoE Mezz, but that doesn't do much in today's game. It just gets resistant. People just breeze through it. So dropping that down a little bit to allow for multi-specking, where you could spec in pretty low into body, get a matter debuff. That could be something that could be looked into. But really, it's just the matter line. Nothing else needs to be changed with the sorcerer. And me sticking with the matter line, that's simply because I really think that every class should be able to spec 3 ways and be played 3 ways in RVR, because this game really is about RVR. It's not a PvE game anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an RVR game, and sorcerers might be closer than most to having 3 viable lines, but not quite there on matter. Anyone else? Closing thoughts?
Touching on the mentalist again. I know one thing I discussed with a lot of Menti players was what they feel about getting the energy debuff tied in to the near sight. It makes sub-specking mana to 26 with the 47 mentalist as the main spec really strong. You effectively get a near sight, which is a great spell anyway, and it has a long-lasting 10% debuff for energy. And energy is obviously what our spec DD does. That's a pretty potent combination. I know the only other class that gets a debuff built into a near sight is the wizard in Earth spec, I think it is, but they can't debuff any of their other lines with that. It's only for that particular spec.
Kiraniri, I think you were trying to jump in there. Go ahead.
Well, he just made me think of something that we have not discussed at all tonight, at least for the Necromancer class, and that is the AF debuff and how it got changed recently. They've made it virtually non-functional because it's now, instead of being cast from the pet, it's cast from the shade. So the shade has to stop moving to cast it. And it's 4.5 seconds, so it's extremely longer. I mean, give it back to us on the actual pet cast on the move like it used to be.
Didn't you guys also get nerfed on the spell piercing?
No, the class got fixed. It was supposed to be 10% the whole time, and it was you could do 22.5%, I think.
Okay, well, we're about 3 minutes short of where we started when Shileah took over for streaming. I guess if there's any closing comments, jump in. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out of your Sunday evening.
No problem. Thank you for hosting this.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having us on.
Okay, Shileah, are you there, or did you fall asleep?
I'm still there, so yeah, thank you everybody, and thank you for being our host tonight, and thank you everybody for joining us. And yeah, that's it. We're closing down then.
All right, see everybody out there on the battlefield. Take it easy on the troll bone dancers.
No promises.